Hello, and welcome to our workshop. This workshop was previously delivered by SMU's Academic Learning Services Writing Center. As a result, you may hear references to other workshops, be prompted to take part in group activities, or hear references to the active chat from the original delivery of this session. As you follow along, feel free to pause the video and participate in exercises and activities as best you can. We hope you enjoy the workshop.
So in today's session, we'll be talking about online learning. We're going to go into a little bit more detail of how to actually reorganize your space, reorganize your habits, and again, create some skills that can help you with your new virtual university and learning. But yeah, let's get started into this session and figuring out ways to kind of organize our space and ways to make the most of kind of learning in a way that's keeping ourselves accountable and creating the best environment to do that as well. One of the main things, especially with starting off, so right now we're in mid-August, can't believe I'm saying that, and so in a few weeks or so, university will be starting up. So now is kind of the time to A, enjoy the rest of your summer, and B, as university approaches, to start thinking of how you can kind of go into the year feeling organized, and staying proactive as well. So what are ways that you can kind of, with your assignments, with your class structures, how can you reorganize the way that you're thinking, even organize yourself in general to be ready for the semester, especially from a virtual context. And again, as always, just before we really get into everything, please feel free, if you have any questions, to jump in or to leave those in the chat, and one of us, whether it's Emma or Mia, will get back to you as soon as possible. So the first important thing that we want to think about is organizing our information. So the work that we have to do, organizing our virtual space. So a lot of times when we think of, okay, I want to organize my space, we think of maybe our desk, we think of maybe the room we're in, or a kitchen table if that's where we're doing work. But sometimes we have to start thinking now is organizing our virtual space. So just like maybe we had notebooks going into our classes, or having even a Word document up as you were taking notes. Right now, especially, there's no more kind of those handouts. It's not going to be the same thing where the prof will hand out his or her syllabus. You won't have like your assignment sheets handed out to you in class. You might not have, you won't have as many like hard copy papers. It'll be different. And a lot of the work that you will be doing or will be asked of you will be exclusively on a virtual platform, whether that's submitting your assignments, whether that's doing or creating your assignments, or contributing to a discussion board post, or submitting a certain type of course assignment. So in this way, you want to think of organizing your virtual space. So your computer, which will almost start to mimic like a series of binders that you had for each class. So the best way, and again, take this with a grain of salt, not what works for me or what works for somebody else might not work for you. But again, this is just so that you are aware of ways and to get you thinking about ways to really help get everything in order before you get started. So there's two ways really to organize your space. You can create, whether it's on your desktop or in your OneDrive or Google Drive. Again, on tomorrow's session with SAS, we will be talking about your OneDrive and how you can access that and save and share folders in that. And the other option as well is your desktop. So just right onto your computer how you can create folders to help you organize your space. So in both instances, whether it's desktop or your OneDrive or Google Drive, folders will become your best friend. Organizing things into spaces, into places where you know where they are going to exist, will really help you to separate them into different subsections. And again, I'll show you that in a minute. It'll help you to organize things in ways that are visual and they're in their own spot. You won't lose any assignment instructions. You keep your graded assignments organized so you can keep track of them. You keep lectures and notes in one area. This will really help you to have this folder that has maybe all of your fall 2020 information in it. Maybe you can have a folder for projects that you're still working on that haven't been finished. And so with a series of folders, it can really organize your space so that you don't just have a bunch of files that are saved in your documents, some that are in your downloads, maybe scattered all across your desktop. So just like with your space, you want to make sure that your virtual and your digital information media is also organized so that you can open it up and then feel, okay, this is where everything is. And studies have shown that when things are cluttered, whether it's physically in our space or in virtually in our desktop, it can slow us down and can cause us to be not as proactive and efficient in our work. So here's an example of having your fall semester folder set up and let's say this is your course list. You have an English, commerce class, you have a history class, and you have a biology class. So if we were to click on the fall, within that fall 2020, we have another series of folders. So the most important part, again, in general, just to take away from this, is to make sure that you are labeling your folders clearly, that you have a naming system that's clear and consistent. So here you see that in my system, I have the course code clearly in all caps, and I have the actual the number that goes along with it, so it's entirely there, and I know exactly what course it's for. Especially if you have more than one English course, this comes in handy to have the number associated with it as well. So clicking onto that, you want to get into the details of the course. So further, even into the course, you see that I have it divided up into other folders where I can put my documents in. So again, you see the naming, it's consistent. Again, I know exactly that even though it's in the folder for English that I clicked on, you want to further make sure that you are being consistent in the sense of, okay, this is the English. Here are important handouts. Here are my PowerPoints with notes that I took while listening to the lecture. Here is the assignment drafts, for example, that you're working on. And these are my assignment guidelines. So again, take this with a grain of salt. This is just kind of an example of how you could organize your space. And again, this makes it so much easier so that you know where everything is. You're not rushing around and figuring out, oh, I remember I downloaded this file. It's in my downloads, but I forget where, or is it in my recents, or is it saved on my desktop? It really will help with that. It'll help with you keeping your information organized. It'll help keep you on track and on top of your work. So as you are kind of maybe right now, you know what courses you're taking, maybe taking, if you have an hour or so, or even half an hour, just to create a folder and just to organize it so that you, to the best of whatever works for you, of course, organize it so that you have your folders for each course. You know where documents are going to go. You don't have to be rushing around and losing maybe an assignment or having to start something over again because you can't find the original. And it avoids just downloading the same thing over and over again. And it'll help you with studying, especially if you keep your PowerPoints and your notes and class lecture notes. Maybe that's something a prof might post, just to keep them organized and in one space that you know of. Going on from that, from having that virtual digital space organized, you want to make sure that you are creating a schedule. So we talked about flexibility. We talked about your time being very much led by you and led by, of course, your classes. But also there's going to be space where you are able to figure out what it is that you want to do with your time, especially with asynchronous lectures, so lectures that are pre-recorded, and you're given a certain amount of time to listen to that lecture. You are able to create, again, your schedule. You're able to create what you want to do with your time, and setting a schedule early on and setting a schedule that's comprehensive will really help you to take ownership of your time and to be accountable of what you have to do and when you have to finish it by. A lot of times if I have a really busy week, you can, and I don't put everything into my calendar, things slip under the radar. I don't know what I have to finish and when I have to finish it. Sometimes you are rushing in between meetings because you maybe forgot you have 15 minutes and you forgot that you have a meeting in right after another meeting. So just little things like that, organizing your space, especially digitally, will help you to create a place that is effective, that you can go to and see, okay, I have this, this, and this. I have space here to do this. Today's a busy day. I don't have time to work that day. You can give if you have a part-time job, you can give them your schedule. So for example, I know this might be a little bit tricky to see, but let's say on Monday, looking at Monday, September 2020, not 2020, looking at the first day. So I have English 1205 lecture. Doing that, putting your lectures in, especially if it is something that you're required to go to, if it's asynchronous or synchronous, sorry. So just like this. And you see here, I put in brackets Zoom. So this helps me to know, okay, my lecture is in Zoom. I don't have to be going in my syllabus, going through the different forms that I have and files for the different classes. I know right off the bat, my English is going to be in Zoom. So looking at the schedule right away, I know, okay, so lecture at 9:30 to 11. Then I have a little bit of a break. So that break could be where you do maybe an activity, whether it's you go for a run or you game a little bit in between classes, or you catch up on the reading for the biology lecture right after. So see, in that way you have your space organized. Again, right after you have your biology lecture, and you see in brackets virtual classroom. So that's where it's going to take place. So right here, this is virtual classroom. So you know your biology lecture is going to take place there. Then you have a little bit of a break, and then you have your biology lab group meeting. So again, doing it in this way, you see that you can schedule your classes. For example, if you had a synchronous or an asynchronous lecture that was pre-recorded by a prof, and they give you 2 days to do it, to look through it. So you have Monday and Tuesday to watch it. Your Monday's pretty booked, but your Tuesday looks good. So you can schedule yourself in maybe the morning to watch that lecture, and even put in brackets pre-recorded lecture, watch now, so that you don't forget that you have to watch a lecture, so that it doesn't disappear and that you don't have access to it anymore. So that's a good way to keep yourself organized for both synchronous and asynchronous lectures. You have a study group here. So really organize your time and even color code it so that purple maybe might mean school related or university related. Blue will mean your part-time job. And maybe pink will mean social activities or social engagements that you have, or leisure activities that you have set up. So in doing it this way, the nice thing I like about digital calendars is that you can set it up to give you a 15-minute, half an hour, whatever time frame warning beforehand. so that, let's say maybe something slips your mind, you get a notification, whether it's on your phone or your computer, that's like, in 15 minutes, you have this XYZ. So that's the nice thing about a digital calendar, is that it gives you warning. You can see it all in kind of a week basis, and you can organize your time in all things, in all aspects, whether it's leisure, school related, hobbies, work commitments, all of that. You can organize it in one space, and you can really see where you have pockets to use your time for yourself, where you have time where you have to focus on work, and you can organize it in a way that suits you. So let me check the chat quickly. Yes, SAS will definitely help you with that. A lot of times your calendar will be linked to your email. So if you have your email set up onto your phone, then anything you put into your email, like into your Outlook calendar, will ding on your phone. So again, they'll definitely be able to help you, but that's a way that you can connect those two. So the other thing that I want to talk about is creating a study space. So we talked about organizing and creating a clear digital space, but just as important is creating a study space that'll help you switch into study mode. So we all know that we are working from home. We are working from a space that isn't kind of sometimes going to another designated area, such as like a lecture hall that signifies, okay, it's lecture time. I'm going to sit in this space with other peers and work on it. When we are living at home, and as you've probably seen in the last 5 or so months, sometimes it can feel like the day is just bleeding into the next. So when I started working from home, it felt like it was just working and then going to bed and then working, and it was just like one long extended week essentially. And there was no really change in pattern. So you really have to be mindful of creating a space that's designated for work, and then places that are designated for rest or for doing activities, or just having just one space this is my workspace. I don't do anything else here. I'm not going to go on my phone here. I'm not going to go on social media here. I'm not going to use this as a leisure space. Just having a separate location and creating an effective space. So some helpful tips. Again, I know that there are limitations sometimes with our living situation. If we're living with multiple people, it might be hard to be able to organize that and find a space that fits all and is like the perfect space for you. But choosing a space with natural lighting will really help you to, especially if you're like in front of a window, you get that natural light. You're not kind of just surrounded by walls, which can be a little dismal after a few hours. Choosing a place by the router, so near a strong Wi-Fi connection. Again, sometimes this can be tricky with how our homes are set up or with the Wi-Fi we have. So doing your best again to do that. If you know that you have maybe your Wi-Fi isn't as strong, if wherever you're living at has maybe loosened the quarantine rules, and you can go to cafes with stronger Wi-Fi, that's an option again if that's allowed and wherever you are. But finding a place that's close to a strong or the strongest Wi-Fi connection is the best way, so that you don't have a choppy connection and that you aren't missing out maybe on things being said in a lecture. Face away from distractions or clutter. That's a really good one. Sometimes if we have a messy space behind us or around us, it can be really hard to focus because it's just the clutter can cause kind of a feeling of clutter in your brain too. So even if this is simply as turning your desk to face maybe a wall, face away from the mess that's behind you or from the clutter that's behind you, or even from people that are behind you too. It can be kind of a physical distancing, creating your own space. And the other thing, finally, is very important, keeping your desk and study space clean and organized. You want to be sure that your space is just as clean as your the digital organization. So what I usually recommend to students is having, and again, everything that you do, whatever works for you, go with that. If you have a method and you have a bunch of piled papers and everything and you know where everything is, then keep doing that if that works for you. But generally, if you are finding it hard to focus, that might be your desk space or your workspace. So having maybe just what you need for each lecture right by you. So having the textbook for biology, let's say, right beside you when you're listening to a biology lecture. Having just your agenda or your notebook beside you and a pen so that you can take notes might help you to kind of stay focused. Removing any electronics other than your laptop or your tablet that you're working off of. So putting your phone away, putting it in a different room, or even having it just far away from you so you're not tempted to do in the middle of a lecture, where if you're bored and when you zone out and you're like, oh, I'll just grab my phone, even just out of habit, and start scrolling. And once you start scrolling, it's just this cascade. And the lecture's over before you know it, and you haven't paid attention. So just avoiding those little things. Again, all of this is new and learning how to create new habits. So try to practice, and when you are in the actual, like in September when lectures start, if something's not working for you, rearrange your space. Make little changes. Don't stick with the same thing and then not make a change if it's not working for you. Right off the bat, within that first week, really set those habits down, find what works for you. And if it doesn't, reorganize your space, move around, throw your phone away in a different room. And so we'll be talking about different study habits as well in a second, but there's different ways that you can create a space that's conducive to studying and to learning and listening to lectures as well. So I'm just going to move on quickly. So quickly, right now, look around your space, where you're sitting. Are you in your bedroom? Are you in a shared living space right now? Are there people around you? Is your phone right beside you? Are you on your phone? Just like look around your space, how and what we talked about right now, and think of maybe ways, and being mindful of maybe ways that you can change your space. Right now, I'm in my basement. I don't have a specific office. I live with other people. I live with my family. And so it's sometimes hard to deal with their schedules and if they're working from home, as well as kind of how they want to, of course, if they have their friends over or their family over, or we have people over, dealing with that, or if the phone rings like we saw earlier. This time, having a shared space, things happen, but it's setting yourself up. And for me, that was locking myself in the basement and banning everybody from coming downstairs. But sometimes in a space, if it's a smaller space, or if there are multiple people working from home and there's just kind of one designated area that you can do that in, it can be tricky. And so doing things to kind of to organize that, whether it's having your space removed, or having a space that's a little separate from kind of everything else. I used to work at the kitchen table, but it was right near the fridge. And so I was just making trips back and forth for no reason, just to get snacks. And so just as a distraction, because I didn't want to sit and work. So I had to kind of go to a space where there wasn't anything that was kind of distracting me, and like having people around, or if my family was around and then I'd want to chat. And so you have to sometimes put yourself in a room or even with a small table and just your desk and just your work just for a few hours, and kind of move around and figure out your organization and your space. I'm just going to check the chat really quickly. I see a question. Any tips for students who also have young children at home? Oh, that is a good question. I'll be honest, I'm not an expert in this. I know that is something that is tricky, of course. But as we are going through, I will be talking a little bit more about study habits and ways to organize our space and time. So hopefully by the end of this session, you'll maybe have a little bit more of an idea or some tips to organize your space and help with having, if you have younger children or if you have other people living with you. I think the biggest thing is, of course, profs are aware of this, that everyone has a different living situation and a different home life, of course. And so I think the best bet, especially if you do have younger children, is to talk to your profs beforehand and send them an email outlining that XYZ, this is my situation. It doesn't just have to be children, but if you do have, or if you're taking care of family members, for example, let your prof know beforehand. Not necessarily just because just so that they're aware. So because we are all human, and letting your profs know so that they are aware of what it is that you are, what your home life is like, and what your situation is like, and that maybe sometimes things come up, especially with children, that maybe you can't be at a lecture, or you can't be at this lab at this certain time because of something requirements with your children, or if you're taking care of somebody else in your family or friends. So that's my advice, is talking and being open with your professor or your lab instructor, just to let them know this is my situation. And sometimes things might come up, so that they're aware. And most profs are sympathetic, and they just want you to be open and communicative with them. And especially in a first year sense, going into your first year, that's definitely something that most profs will be sympathetic towards, and understanding, of course. But I'll continue on, and hopefully by the end of the presentation, if you have any other questions, please feel free to jump in. So breaking down large tasks, taking big assignments, this is a really important one. As you start getting assignments, as you start getting more tasks, readings, especially exams as well, or tests, listing them into smaller activities will help increase productivity and motivation. So let's look at an example of that. So let's say you have, on my left, you have this to-do list of history notes, reading your short stories for English, and you have a virtual classroom session at 2 p.m. And you want to complete this in one day. And so by the end of the day, these large tasks, you might not be able to complete them, even though it looks like it's just 3 things. We can see on the right side here that these 3 things contain, and usually, like most assignments, they contain multiple parts. So listing them up into their small components and going through and kind of crossing off will really help. There's almost this feeling of course, accomplishment and productivity when we cross off things. So in this example, where you have the 1, 2, 3, and it looks like a short list, and you don't get everything completed, it can be discouraging. And so when you kind of expand it into, okay, so I have to review notes, but it's for lecture 3 and 4. I have to read these 3 short stories. And before my lecture, I have to actually submit a reflection. So having it so that, okay, by the end of the day, I would manage to finish reviewing one lecture. I was able to read two short stories, and I finished and I submitted a reflection, and I was able to attend my classroom session. So looking at that, you feel a lot more accomplished, as opposed to kind of seeing this 1, 2, 3 and going, oh, I didn't actually finish any of these things. But when you actually list them into their parts, you're able to see, yes, I did accomplish quite a bit. And that's motivating. And you want to make sure that you are continuing to motivate yourself, especially in a setting where you are much more self-accountable and self-reliant. And you feel a lot better about the work that you did and accomplished, and it'll help you to keep going on as well, without being discouraged about the amount of work that you did that day. So just to kind of going along with that, your study methods are going to change maybe. Because we are in a virtual setting, your new environment might cause you to have to change the way that you study. So whether that's your living space, whether that's who you're living with, maybe challenges and timing is going to change. So be aware. I mean, constantly, this is a learning process, as we've said before. So be aware of what's working for you and what isn't. Make changes accordingly and early on as well. So see if something's not working. I mean, we're all human, and it's a process. Even in a regular university, like face-to-face sessions, going into university is an adjustment, and your study habits might change. So now more than ever, be aware of what those changes are that you need to make. And be mindful of your schedule and of your timing as well. Here's one kind of example of a way that you can study to really help you with your own schedule. And you might have heard of this or heard of it with a different name. But the Pomodoro technique is essentially working for increments of time, having breaks in between, and then having a larger break after a series of Pomodoros or a series of those intervals. So the nice thing about this, and what I think how it's effective, especially in a virtual environment, is that you are, especially it can be exhausting watching so many lectures online or being on your computer and doing work for a long period of time, especially if there isn't that in between where you have to get up and walk to your next class, where you are in the same environment maybe for the entire day. So the nice thing about it is that you work for 25 minutes, and then you set an alarm after that, and to take a 5-minute break, and then you repeat that for 4 or 5 times, and then after the 5th interval, you take a longer break, so a 15 to 20-minute break, and then you do that cycle again. So although this is, again, this working for 25 minutes can sometimes not be feasible, especially with if you have a lecture, like a 75-minute lecture, or a lab, or you have an assignment that might take a little bit longer time. But definitely try to set up a schedule or set up a way where you work for a chunk of time, and then you give yourself a little bit of a break. So whether that's a phone break, limiting yourself, though I know it can be tricky, but a 5-minute phone break, a 5-minute maybe yoga stretch break, maybe it's going to the kitchen and making a cup of coffee, or grabbing a snack, or it might even be in going outside for a little bit, just to change, kind of get a change, get some fresh air, get a change of scenery, just to get up out of your chair, because it can be very exhausting to just sit and feel like we're getting things accomplished, but just sitting and working kind of for hours, 5 hours at a time, or even 3 hours at a time, your brain kind of turns into mush and you no longer absorb information. So really try to set some of these habits of really working for a chunk of time, getting up, giving yourself a 5-minute break, then going back to it. And then at the end, maybe after a few of these little intervals, giving yourself a longer a longer break, maybe to watch a quick 20-minute episode, for example, of a show, or to go for a quick little jog or something, whatever it is that you're interested in or your hobbies are, or that maybe give your brain a little bit of a rest. So definitely try to take those into consideration. The other thing that I find helpful is listening to pre-recorded lectures, maybe more than once if you have the time, playing them back at a slower pace if that works for you, if the prof is talking too fast, so that you can take notes. And then even if you're going for a run or if you're going for a walk or doing chores, listening to the lectures just like a podcast, kind of going through as a preliminary go through, so you get that information, and then later on you can go through it in more detail. That might be a way that's helpful for you, especially if you are more of an audio learner, or if you love audiobooks and podcasts. That might be a good way for you to learn and to absorb the information while doing something else, while maybe doing chores, or just listening to it in the background as well. Again, similar to what we talked about, we have this, I think especially now, we have this, I guess, idea that if we're not multitasking, we're not accomplishing anything, if we're not doing all of these things at once. So I really encourage you to look at the art of monotasking, of essentially just taking one thing at a time, whether it's one assignment at a time, listening to one lecture at a time, and not having it minimized in the side while doing something else. Trying to really focus on the assignment at hand, the lecture at hand, whatever it is that you're doing, and not to feel like you have to do everything at one time. You're a lot more productive when you are monotasking, when you are doing one thing at one time. Your focus is just on that one thing. You get it done faster as opposed to stretching it out for a longer period of time. And you're able to take breaks in between those different tasks. For example, like we talked about, whether it's to exercise, or whether it's to game, or whether it's to just sit there in silence and not listen to anything, not have any technology around you, or even to chat with your roommates or your family or whoever you're with. That's just helpful, good for your mental health, and it's good for you to kind of, okay, I'm done this task, I'm going to take a break. And then I'm going to change kind of my mental scenery and then go back to work. So definitely try to practice that. Try to avoid doing more than one thing at one time, and really prioritize yourself and take breaks when you're feeling run down and exhausted as well, and mentally exhausted, especially from just staring at a computer as well. So this is just kind of tying into all of that, Parkinson's law, which states work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So for example, if you have an essay assigned on the 6th, and then you know that it's due a week later, sometimes, and maybe you're familiar with this, the work will stretch out, even though maybe it was a paragraph that you had to write. Knowing that you have all of this time will cause it to stretch out and might take you this much longer to complete. So try to avoid, kind of, even if you have a longer due date, when you have time, try to schedule it so that it's completed a little bit before the due date, so that you aren't kind of filling in that space just because something is due, and that you're giving yourself some time to do other work as well. So just be mindful of that, especially in weeks that maybe aren't as busy. You might feel like, okay, I have this whole week to do these couple of assignments, and the work will squeeze into that whole time frame, just because of this law and just human nature as well. So try to be mindful of that when you do get assignments, and try to use your time as best as possible. So even if it's a quieter week, try to do some readings or try to catch up on work, anticipate whatever is happening in the following week. And that'll help, again, make your life a little easier, especially if you have a hectic week that's coming up, and you can prep for that, especially in quieter weeks as well. Just going to... So you want to make sure that you are, again, setting yourself up for success. You want to make sure that you are avoiding distractions. And I know this is way easier said than done, 100%. Even working from home can be hard to navigate those distractions like we talked about earlier. And so having your space set up, having that virtual information management set up can really help you with definitely organizing your space and organizing your time as well. But it's important also to, I'm going to go back a bit. It's also important to be able to note, okay, these are the areas that aren't working for me. I'm feeling really distracted, and changing them. And so maybe social media is a big distraction. So having some sort of like application like work mode, for example, where you put in maybe the websites that are distracting you. And so this is like one of them. There's another one where you can it kicks you out. You can set it up for a time frame, and you have 3 hours where you can't access these different apps. You can set this up with your phone if you find you're always reaching to your phone. Going to a space where people aren't going to be there, turning your desk away from people if you are in a shared space, letting people know your schedule. This can be a way to help with that, creating time for work and time for leisure, and making sure that you're not just because it's online where you feel like, oh, I don't really need to do this. I can go out with my friends, or I can go do this activity and this activity, and I'll watch my lectures later. Whatever it is that you find is distracting you, whether it's friends or whether it's social media, whatever it may be, or even your space, try to change it to the best of your ability, and put in things in place like work mode, for example, that blocks you out from different applications or different websites. Maybe websites that are distracting to you. Putting away certain things or hiding them from yourself can sometimes work. Definitely with my phone, I have to put it in a different room, just so that it's out of sight, out of mind, and then checking it periodically when I take my breaks. That just might be a way to help you and to help organize your space as well. And so I just want to do a quick poll of what your biggest distraction is. Let me initiate this poll quickly. And so I'm just going to write this really quickly. And because all of these things, I know sometimes it's hard to navigate these things and to determine, oh, okay, I can't, in my space, it's not conducive for learning. I'm not able to focus, but it's just about making little changes. And I'm not saying it's easy by any means. Learning from online can be a real big kind of switch for you. And so being able to identify what's distracting you will really help. So I'm going to create this. Will really help you to be aware of what your biggest distraction is, and help you to be aware of what changes that you really need to make. And so if you find that you are distracted by Netflix, let's say, or distracted by your social media, blocking it, putting away the devices that you use, or maybe gaming. Let's say you love Animal Crossing, putting away your Switch, hiding it from yourself, or giving yourself time to allotting a certain break time to play with that. So just looking at the different things and different ways that you can navigate those different distractions. So I'm going to publish this. So you see your phone, 56%, and then social media right after, as anticipated, and then some friends, roommates, family. So again, the biggest thing, it seems, is generally your phone or social media. So try to be aware of that. Social media isn't going to run away if you don't check it in a couple hours, and neither is your phone. So just set those habits in place right now by making the changes, whether it's a physical, removing that thing from your line of sight, or designating time during your break to actually look at it. And again, I'm not saying it's easy, and distractions, especially living at home or being at home and working from home, can pop up in different ways. But just be mindful of what those are, and try your best to rearrange those habits, as well as rearrange your space again to the best of your ability. I believe this is the last or second last thing I want to talk about. Similarly, be aware of areas that are causing anxious feelings and anxiety. For example, maybe logging into a new platform, maybe today logging into virtual classroom gave you a little bit of feelings of anxiety just because you are not familiar with this platform. What if you can't find the classes? What if you log in, you don't use the correct login? Managing your class schedule, that might be something that's causing some feelings of trepidation and hesitation. How am I going to be self-accountable? Maybe speaking up during online or breakout rooms. Maybe that's something that causes you some feelings of anxiety too, or anxiety itself. Or submitting written work for everyone to see. You might be asked to submit some discussion board posts that everyone's going to see, and maybe you're not comfortable with that. Maybe you're not comfortable with your level of writing. Maybe you're not sure how you're going to communicate that information. So there's different ways that in virtual learning that might be sparking some points of anxiety or nervousness. And so be aware of that. That's totally normal to feel these feelings, especially going into a new way of learning. So be aware of them. Totally address them right away. So make sure that you're thinking, okay, what is bringing me this nervousness? Why am I feeling anxious? And hopefully throughout this week, we give you the tools, whether it's supporting you with your writing and how to write in a university context and in summer writing workshop, or in how to access different platforms such as Teams and Zoom and Virtual Classroom and Brightspace. Or whether it's showing you right now how to manage your class schedule. And again, all of this and this buildup of nerves and maybe anxiety can be attributed to this new space. And a lot of times new things can cause us to feel like we aren't able to, that's unknown and not being sure what it's going to look like. And so hopefully in this week, you're getting a glimpse of that. And you're getting practice into how to access these different things and how to organize your space. And remember that this is new, and that you are, all of this is a learning process, and that you are going to do fine as long as you are on top of things, you're staying organized, you are being aware of what's not working and changing it. It's all about adapting and changing and being able to identify what it is that's not working and making a change, or reaching out to supports if you yourself can't make that change, whether it's reaching out to the SAS, whether it's reaching out to the Writing Center for writing help if you're not achieving what you thought you would be, or you need more support, or even reaching out to the Counseling Center if you need to talk to somebody. If it's deeper and maybe this anxiety is manifesting into different areas. So no matter what it is, there's so many supports for you, and just be aware of what those points of anxiety are, and making changes into how and being aware of how you can maybe learn about these ways and practice them and kind of conquer those feelings. But if you are feeling anything like this is totally normal, especially with it being a new atmosphere, a new working, studying dynamic as well. So don't feel like you are the only one. We're all feeling definitely excited and a little nervous for the new semester. There's nothing more important also than making those connections and participating and reaching out to the supports, reaching out to your profs, especially because they're there to help you and to let them know about your situation, like we talked about earlier. Let them know if you have any qualms, if you have any fears going into their class. Again, we're all learning, and we're all the university is here to support you, of course, and reaching out to your peers as well, whether we'll be showing you in different ways of how to do breakout rooms, how to create study groups through Teams, for example, and to connect. There's nothing more important right now than connecting with your peers, creating groups, whatever it is, however you connect with your peers, whether it's adding them on social media, if you're comfortable with that. Just make those connections so that you have that support, that you have people helping you, and that's essentially what we're here to do.